Nation, thank you so much for watching and listening, however you choose to consume. I want to thank you. This is video slash podcast number two of a roughly 10-part series on sites and what that means in 2025 going forward. So, last time I discussed why sites are the new power players, and this would explain why private equity is after them. And just go check that one out if you haven't already. It's probably not too far back from this one. You can search channel history and find it. It's easier on the podcast. Today, what I'm going to talk about is what sponsors really want in 2025 going forward. And they're not saying it out loud. You got to network with the right people. As much as this industry talks about inclusion and diversity and welcoming new sites, there's still the good old boys club. And it's still like those people may have changed, but the archetype's still there. There's people in the know, there's the money players, there's the power players, and then there's everyone else. And some sites are included in that, but they're the higher ups at these larger site networks. And again, there's probably like 6 to 12 really big ones, and then there's everyone else. Now, if you watch the last video, you'll see and you'll hear. I predict that that will change by the end of this decade. I think there's going to be a lot more than just 10% of sites that are part of a site network. I think it's going to be closer to 30. And that's only 5 years away. So that means a lot of acquisitions in this next 5 years. Plus, you got to account for the new sites that are going to be opening up that are theoretically too young to join these networks, but I mean, anything's possible. So, what do sponsors really want? I mean, this is kind of what's driving it. At the end of the day, we can pontificate all we want about how the industry works, what's happening, and ultimately, if the sponsors are the ones that pay for this stuff. So if the sponsors don't like it, they're not going to do it. So sponsors say they want efficiency, but what they really want is less risk, and what they really want is more predictability, and that's where site networks win. Now, you can say efficiency is predictability, fair enough, but that's where the site networks are gaining the market share. Not to mention, sponsors are slowly, if you're paying attention, you don't even have to pay attention. You just need to own a site. Perhaps you work at a CRO. Perhaps you work at a sponsor. Sponsors are slowly moving away from traditional CRO only models, and they're moving into functional service provider models. So this is where instead of hiring a full service CRO, they have functional service providers. So maybe just the monitoring or maybe just data management. Usually it's the monitoring component. Now, this is nothing new. This has been going on for over a decade by the bigger pharma. And the bigger pharma are getting even more involved now because of the technology that is available to everyone. Because of the fact that sites are starting to use the tech on their own, it's called bring your own tech, rather than being forced to utilize certain tech, which some sponsors still do for certain studies. Sites are left to their own devices, no pun intended, but there is some pun there, for how they're going to operate. So far, you could use eSource, you could use PaperSource. There are some sponsors that are doing direct data capture, so DDC, and direct data capture. There's companies like Medrio that offer that, where there really is no source, but if the sites want to use their source, you can use whatever source you want. So we actually are part of a study like this right now, where we are using Medrio for direct data capture. But we choose to use Creo as well because as a site owner, I'm responsible to the FDA for our study. Not the sponsor's responsible for their study overall, but I'm responsible for my site. And if I don't see a good way to document process of consent, for example, or just documenting the narrative and the details and the nuances that go into any particular visit, you need to bring your own tech. So BYOT, bring your own tech. It's super important. This is something that a lot of the sponsors have started allowing, basically, and it's something that sort of evolved on its own. And now I would say 50% of sites and growing, maybe it's closer to 60 now, are using some form of e-source, and they have some kind of capabilities, like some kind of reporting capabilities. Hey, show me some demographics, show me, really quickly. A lot of sites have EMRs integrated with other AI. Like in our case, we're trying to get Select IQ set up. I'm an advisor, full disclosure, for Select IQ on Creo. So that's our eSource. They're sponsor of this podcast. I've been using eSource for 5 years now with Creo, and Creo is starting to have robust reporting tools that sites can now show sponsors. This is only going to increase. But the fact that sites are already doing this on their own was basically a green light. They reached a tipping point where roughly 50% of the sites are doing this. That the big sponsors sat back, probably internally, and probably discussed amongst themselves, like I said, the good old boys club. You know what? These sites are already collecting this stuff. And look around, Bob. They're starting to merge. Like they're consolidating. There's Alcanza, there's Velocity, there's all these other site networks. 6 to 12 major players right now. Why don't we work out deals with them? Now, those are not CROs. Do I think they're going to encroach on CRO territory going forward? I think in many ways they already have. Look at something like feasibility. Look at something like site selection. In the past, you didn't have site networks, you didn't have consolidation, you had SMOs, but it was a much smaller scale, and things were not cleanly streamlined like they are now. They weren't as sophisticated. You certainly didn't have this layer of technology on top of it. You needed the CROs to guide the sponsor. Hey, we know you want to do an arthritis study. We know a good site in Yuma, Arizona. We know another one in Pensacola, Florida. We know another one in Wilmington, North Carolina. We know another one in Boise, Idaho, et cetera, et cetera. Now, sponsors don't need to do that. They go to a site network. They set up a direct relationship with that site network. They get access to the sites. Hey, Alcanza or so and so, and I don't know the inner workings of Alcanza or Velocity. To me, they're all the same. They go to one of those companies and they say, "Hey, I'm running arthritis study. What do you got for me in your 100 plus sites in your network?" Oh, well, we can pull up the reports right now, and we've got 25 sites that we think can do well for your trial. I was at an investigator meeting a year and a half ago. This is October of 2023. A big one for a big indication, obesity, a huge pharma. They had over 100 sites, international. The meeting was in Dallas, Texas. I got curious, so I looked at the attendees list. Roughly half of the sites were represented by two or three site networks. There were like two that had the majority of that half, and then another one that had a good amount, like 10% of that half. That's all one company. The rest of that half were independent sites like me. Luckily, we're still around, right? There's still 90% of us. We call this subscale, meaning we haven't streamlined our processes fully. We're working on it. Um, the natural question people ask me is, would you ever join a site network? The answer is it depends. That's another podcast, but I'm looking to be the platform or just remain independent. I'm not interested in being an add-on. I do think at some point, and I don't know how long, if this trend continues, at some point to compete, especially in the crowded markets like Miami, Houston, Dallas, LA, New York, what's another crowded market? Chicago, Phoenix. You're gonna need to join a site network. Site networks are, like I said, creeping into CRO territory already. There's even whispers and rumors, and I'm talking to people in the know. They're starting to help on protocol design. They're starting to help on medical monitoring. It makes sense. They're starting to help on data management. It makes sense. Think about it. The majority of medical monitors I know used to be PIs or sub-Is. It's a nice job. You need some research experience. What better than someone who used to be a PI or a sub-I that maybe still does studies on their own, but they want to do this on the side? Great job. Who has access to investigators? Site networks. My own site. We have my own site can do this right now. If a sponsor asked me, hey, we got one study, we want you to assign a medical monitor to it. We can do that. We have 6 PIs already at my site. We have a dermatologist, a psychiatrist, a pulmonologist, a cardiologist, a nephrologist, and 2 internal medicine physicians. Sorry, we have 7 PIs at my site. Now, there's some redundancy because that internal medicine, I have 2 internal medicine docs. So let's say I got an internal medicine study and the sponsor said, well, it can't be your PI that's the medical monitor. Do you have somebody else that can do it? Yes, I can do it. And the point of all this is not to brag about how cool my site is. It's actually the opposite. We're a subscale, small, nothing site in the grand scheme of things. And we can provide a medical monitor if a sponsor wanted us to and paid us for it. Easy, no problem. I'll develop SOP and show that PI how to be a medical monitor. They know how to be a PI. What's a medical monitor? Talking to other PIs, looking out for safety throughout the whole study, and dealing with things like inclusion, exclusion issues, SAEs, SUSARs, AEs, CONMEDs, AEs of special interest. That's what the PIs do. So, site networks are creeping into CRO territories. I predicted this 3 years ago. It's happening. This mirrors the way CROs became institutionalized over the past 20 years. I would actually say over the past 40. But really, so the CRO was invented like in the late 70s, early 80s by Dennis Gillings. And they served a great purpose from the 80s until the mid 2000s. Then it became commoditized. I wrote an article on this. The prisoner's dilemma. No one wanted to innovate because if somebody innovated, everybody was going to innovate and prices were going to drop on services and expectations were going to rise. And it's not a good business move. So everyone kind of agreed, let's just not innovate. Let's innovate slowly so we can all kind of communicate to each other. This is how it worked. This is the good old boys club of the CROs. What do you think they do at these conferences, guys? They don't sit there and listen to the panels. I mean, they do, but they'll talk to each other. Hey, Bob, let's have a drinks. Like, get the other guy, get Joe from the other CRO, and let's have a powwow. I don't know that for a fact. This is the educated guess. I'm pretty sure that's how it happens. And then from 2005 till present, that prisoner's dilemma was over, and the CRO started to innovate because they had to, because technology was a huge force that no one could ignore. And it was either you start using it or you get left behind. And that's when you started seeing deflationary. That's when you started seeing CROs trying to differentiate themselves. Then post COVID, that's when these remote tools and really everything became normal. And that's when the sites hopped on that bandwagon. That's when the industry got very busy, and it still hasn't slowed down at the site level yet. Knock on wood, it won't. That's when the private equity came in and said, let's start consolidating these things. Now, not exactly that way, but more or less. The timing is different. There was some early player that were able to foresee things faster, but more or less, that's how it happened. So, this mirrors the way the CROs became institutionalized over the past 20 years. So if you think about the next 20 years, let's say from 2020 to 2040, I think the peak of this site network bonanza, I think we're in the golden era of sites. I said it in the last video. I think 2030 will mark the golden era, maybe the peak. 2030, 2035 will be the peak of the site networks. And then that's going to eventually evolve into something else. Remember, what wins in the marketplace is initially it's predictability, but it's innovation ultimately wins, and innovation is a deflationary force. So the site networks are becoming strategic assets for these sponsors. This is not just about site operations. I mean, there's a reason CROs are buying sites. I don't know if any CRO has bought a site network yet. Uh, I know IQVIA bought a 30 site specialty group in 2023 or 22 for like $300 million. And we're not at the top of the market. I mean, we can see with the current administration, things might slow down a bit on the macroeconomic scale, but I think in this particular industry, if we treat it like a site networks by 2030, 2035, and then something else is going to take over, most likely something revolving around AI or embedded with AI. And I think it'll still be sites, but I think it's going to be leading towards a digital twin, although not yet. I think we got another couple decades after. But sites that operate like micro CROs, I mean, I think by the 2030 to 2035, the site networks are either going to become CROs. So I think IQVIA is going to purchase. I think that's going to be some of these big private equities exits are selling to the large CROs. And I think just like I don't see a site network going public. I think it's the real reason I don't see a site network going public is I think ultimately running a site is messy, as streamlined as you want to get it. You can't get it as streamlined as a CRO ever because you're depending on patients showing up and you're depending on busy clinicians referring and busy clinicians doing things as they're supposed to be doing it. And I think there's not enough security in order to go public. I know some have already, like Sciences 37, but that was more of a tech company. But I do think this CROs acquire some site networks, and then all the site networks get acquired by CROs, and then ultimately, just like happened with the CROs, where they specialize, like the niche ones, they got fragmented and they specialized into a site network for derm, a site network for psychiatry. I think we'll see that too. So protocol design, medical monitoring, data management, site networks are going to start doing that. That's CRO territory. This is not just about site operations, it's about becoming a strategic asset for the sponsors. This will be sites that can operate like the micro CROs will give sponsors less risk off the table. And if you talk to enough sponsors, Robert Goldman, my friend, the sponsor monster, he's on record saying this, and there's many others that echo his sentiment. They just can't say it publicly. We wish CROs had more skin in the game. It's nice that they do all this fee for service and cost plus and all this, but we want the CROs to have more skin in the game. They never got more skin in the game, but the site networks will. And I think the site networks provide more value than the CROs because, again, they're directly running the study at the site level. Sponsors don't just want speed, they want repeatability. And I think they'll take repeatability over maybe slower and less costly study. Repeatability. And then they can plan their portfolio programs. Just my opinion. What do I know? But I put myself out there on the record because I'm actually really interested in this. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Let me know what you think. If you're a sponsor and you got the courage, drop a comment. There's got to be more sponsor monsters out there than just Robert. Bye bye.